Hey everyone, and a big thanks to Lit RPG Reads and Paul Bello, fine fellow, for sending over this awesome article all about crafting unforgettable D&D characters. So we're diving deep into Kenny King's piece, Beyond the Tropes, to unearth those nuggets of wisdom, the ones that'll help us all breathe life into our next character creation. Speaking of breathing life into characters, I'll never forget this one game I played where a friend's character, this seemingly typical human fighter, just completely blew us away. At first glance, his character sheet was pretty standard, decent stats, warrior background, the usual. But as the game unfolded, we discovered that this fighter had an absolutely bizarre obsession with collecting spoons. Not magical artifacts or anything, just plain old spoons. He'd barter for them, liberate them from taverns, even risk his neck to snatch a particularly ornate spoon from a goblin horde. We were all dying laughing at first, but it became this amazing running gag. The dungeon master even started incorporating spoons into the campaign, like hidden clues or even traps triggered by misplaced silverware. But that one tiny weird detail turned a standard fighter into a character we still talk about years later.
That's a great example of how a simple quirk can become a character's defining trait, adding depth and memorability without relying on complex backstories or min-max stats. It's about tapping into the unexpected, those little details that make a character feel real and relatable, even amidst the fantastical world of D&D.
Exactly, and Kenny King's really hints on that in the article. He starts by emphasizing the heart of a character. Stats and skills are important, sure, but it's the emotional core, that driving force, that truly makes a character memorable. He gives the example of a cleric who's driven by a need to atone for a past mistake. Rather than just being a generic healer, suddenly you have a character with inner turmoil, a story waiting to unfold. Are they seeking forgiveness, or maybe even trying to escape their past? That internal conflict immediately adds a layer of intrigue that goes beyond just hitting things with a mace.
It's about understanding that every character, even in a fantasy setting, is driven by desires, fears, and aspirations. And those internal motivations, those flaws and contradictions, are often what makes them so compelling. Think about some of the most iconic characters in literature or film. They're rarely perfect heroes or villains. They're complex individuals with a mix of light and shadow. The article then challenges us to go beyond basic backstories, to move past those generic tropes and find unique origins for our characters. It's not just about being different for the sake of being different, though. It's about creating a backstory that informs your character's personality skills and even their outlook on the world.
Right. The article uses the example of a sorcerer who grew up in a traveling circus. Instead of learning magic from some ancient tome, they learned it from watching fire eaters and illusionists. Their spells might involve dazzling lights or creating illusions to distract enemies. Suddenly you have a character who brings a whole new energy to the table. They might be flamboyant and quick-witted, with a unique perspective on magic that challenges the stereotypical image of a cloistered wizard. And that backstory naturally lends itself to interesting roleplay opportunities. From performing impromptu shows to charming their way out of sticky situations.
And what's really crucial is connecting that backstory to the campaign setting. The article highlights how collaborating with your dungeon master can make a character feel truly integrated into the world. Let's say the campaign is set in a world where magic is tightly controlled by a theocracy. That circus-born sorcerer who learned magic outside of the established institutions instantly has a unique and potentially dangerous position. Are they seen as a threat, a symbol of rebellion? Or maybe they're forced to operate in the shadows, constantly fearing persecution. That tension, that conflict between the character's origins and the world around them can be a fantastic source of drama and intrigue.
That's a great point. It's like weaving your character's story into the very fabric of the world, which makes them feel more real and connected to the overall narrative. It's not just their story, it's part of the world's story too. But creating a memorable character goes beyond just backstory. Kenny King's dives into the concept of motivation and goals. We all know the typical D&D motivations: fame, fortune, glory. But the article suggests layering those surface desires with deeper, more complex motivations. He uses the example of a character seeking wealth. On the surface, pretty standard. But what if that wealth is meant to fund a vendetta against someone who wronged them in the past? Suddenly you have a character wrestling with conflicting emotions: greed, revenge, maybe even a touch of guilt or regret.
Absolutely. Those layered motivations, those internal conflicts are where things get truly interesting. It's about asking yourself, what does my character really want? And what are they willing to do to achieve it? For example, imagine a bard who craves fame and fortune, but deep down they're actually driven by a need to prove themselves to their estranged family, who always dismiss their artistic ambitions. Every performance, every accolade becomes a way of seeking validation from those who never believed in them. It adds a layer of pathos and vulnerability to what might otherwise be a stereotypical charismatic performer.
Ooh, And what if that bard's family ends up being the main villains of the campaign? Talk about a recipe for dramatic tension. That kind of internal conflict, that struggle between personal desires and the greater good, can lead to some truly memorable moments at the table. And that brings us to another crucial point in the article: breaking archetypes. Challenging those preconceived notions about races and classes to create truly unique characters. We've all seen the typical combinations: the noble paladin, the sneaky rogue, the wise wizard. But what happens when you flip the script? What about a gnome barbarian who channels their rage into feats of incredible strength? Or a tiefling druid who finds solace and connection with nature despite their infernal heritage?
Those unexpected combinations can lead to some of the most memorable and entertaining characters. It's about embracing the unexpected and challenging those ingrained assumptions about what a particular race or class should be. One of the best examples I've seen was a halfling paladin who defied all the usual tropes. Instead of being stoic and serious, this paladin was a boisterous party animal who believed that spreading joy and merriment was just as important as upholding justice. He'd charge into battle with a tankard in one hand and a sword in the other, bellowing drinking songs while smiting evil. It was a hilarious subversion of expectations, and it led to some incredibly memorable moments in the game.
That's brilliant. It shows how breaking those archetypes can lead to not only unique characters, but also incredibly fun and engaging gameplay. It's about thinking outside the box and finding those creative combinations that make everyone at the table go, wait a what? Now I know we're just scratching the surface here, and there's so much more to unpack in this article. So after a quick break, we'll be back to dive even deeper into the art of crafting unforgettable D&D characters, exploring topics like character voice, hidden depths, and how to weave those amazing concepts into the very fabric of your campaigns. Stay tuned. Welcome back. We're delving deeper into Kenny King's advice on making D&D characters that truly stick with you. We've talked about heart backstories and breaking the mold. Now let's get into how to really bring those characters to life at the table.
One of the key elements the article highlights is character voice. And this goes beyond just accents or funny catchphrases. It's about how your character sees the world, how they react to situations.
He uses the example of a philosophical wizard who starts every day with a deep, existential debate over breakfast. Now, that might sound a bit eccentric, but think about how that would shape their interactions. They might question everything, analyze situations from unusual angles, maybe even spout cryptic riddles that leave the other players scratching their heads. It's a way to make even the most mundane encounter memorable, because it introduces a unique perspective.
Precisely. It's about finding that unique lens through which your character views the world. Maybe they're a rogue who's always analyzing angles and escape routes, or a bard who sees every situation as a potential song or story. And remember, a distinct voice doesn't have to be loud or over the top. Sometimes the most memorable characters are those with subtle quirks or mannerisms. A character who always speaks in metaphors, for example. Or one who uses overly formal language, even in casual conversation.
Those little touches can make a world of difference. I once played a druid who spoke almost entirely in rhymes. It was a challenge at first, but it really forced me to think creatively and added a whole new layer to my role-playing.
And I'm sure it made for some hilarious and memorable moments at the table. But beyond voice, Kenny King dives into the delicious realm of hidden depths. Because who doesn't love a good secret rite? Characters with hidden layers are inherently more intriguing, like an iceberg with a whole lot more lurking beneath the surface.
He talks about secret architecture, which is essentially layering hidden aspects into your character's background that can be revealed over time. He even provides a table with examples like lost memories, double agent, cursed legacy, or even vengeful spirit. Imagine a seemingly heroic paladin who discovers they're actually descended from a long line of demon worshippers, or a rogue who's secretly working as a double agent for a rival kingdom. The possibilities are endless, and the dramatic potential is huge.
The key is to reveal these secrets at the right time, in a way that creates maximum impact. It's like planting seeds that will blossom later in the campaign, adding layers of complexity and intrigue to the story.
It's like a slow burn reveal that keeps everyone guessing. And it doesn't always have to be some earth-shattering revelation. Sometimes those hidden depths can be more subtle, like an unexpected skill or talent that emerges at a crucial moment. Remember that fighter I mentioned with the spoon obsession? Well, it turned out he wasn't just a collector. He was a master spoonbender who could contort those utensils into lockpicks, grappling hooks, even makeshift weapons. It was a hilarious and unexpected twist that came in handy more than once.
That's a perfect example of how seemingly mundane details can become defining character traits. It's about finding those unexpected connections, those little quirks that make a character feel real and surprising. But even the most well-crafted character needs room to grow. The article talks about character evolution, the idea that characters, just like people, should change and develop over the course of a campaign.
He emphasizes revelation timing, deciding when to reveal those key secret skills or even personality shifts. It's about creating a character arc that feels natural and engaging, with those aha moments sprinkled throughout the campaign. Imagine a timid, bookish wizard who, through a series of trials and challenges, gradually transforms into a powerful and confident leader. Or a brash, impulsive barbarian who learns the value of patience and strategy through their interactions with others.
Those transformations, when handled well, can be some of the most rewarding moments in a campaign. It's like watching your character level up in real life, becoming a more complete and well-rounded version of themselves.
And it's not just about those big dramatic shifts. Sometimes character evolution can be more subtle, like a change in attitude or a newfound understanding of the world. I once played a rogue who was initially motivated purely by self-preservation and personal gain, but as they formed bonds with the other party members, they started taking risks to help others, putting their own needs aside for the sake of the group.
That's a wonderful example of how relationships and experiences can shape a character's growth. It's about embracing those organic moments of change and allowing your character to evolve in response to the challenges and opportunities they encounter. But character growth shouldn't happen in a vacuum. The article stresses the importance of world connection, making your character feel like they truly belong in the world.
He uses the example of a hometown. It can be a source of pride, a place to return to for rest and recuperation, but it can also be a source of conflict or danger. What if your character's hometown is under threat from a tyrannical ruler? Or what if they have a complicated family history that they need to confront?
Those kinds of connections make your character feel more grounded, more invested in the world. It's not just about saving the world in some abstract sense. It's about saving the people and places that matter to them. I played a character once whose entire motivation was to find a cure for a magical plague that had ravaged their hometown. Every decision they made, every quest they undertook, was driven by that singular purpose. It made for a very personal and emotionally charged campaign. And it really highlighted the importance of giving your character a stake in the world beyond just treasure and glory.
It's about finding those personal stakes, those emotional anchors that tie your character to the setting. It could be a lost love, a childhood rivalry, a sworn oath to a long-dead mentor. It's those details that make your character feel unique and irreplaceable. But it's not just about personal connections. Kenny Kings also talks about cultural shaping. Understanding how the culture and society your character comes from has influenced their values, beliefs, and even their fighting style.
He gives the example of a paladin from a war-torn land. They might be more pragmatic and ruthless than a paladin from a peaceful, prosperous kingdom. Their worldview would be shaped by the constant threat of violence, the need to make tough choices in order to survive. Culture can also manifest in more subtle ways, like the rituals and traditions your character observes, the language they speak, the art and music they enjoy. It's about adding those little details that make your character feel authentic and believable.
I'm picturing a bard who comes from a culture where storytelling is considered the highest art form. They might use their performances to weave tales of their adventures, inspiring their companions and influencing the course of events.
That's a wonderful example. It's about finding those cultural touchstones that make your character feel real and relatable. But we've only scratched the surface of what Kenny Kings covers in this fantastic article.
When we come back, we'll wrap up our deep dive with a look at narrative themes, how to draw creative inspiration, and some tips for practical implementation. Stay tuned. Welcome back, adventurers. We're in the final stretch of our deep dive into Kenny King's guide to unforgettable D&D characters. We've covered a ton of ground, from finding your character's heart to giving them a voice and a backstory that pops. Now let's explore how to weave those awesome characters into the very fabric of your campaigns. Kenny Kings calls this section narrative themes, and it's all about aligning your character's personal journey with the bigger picture of the campaign itself.
Think about it. Every good story has those underlying themes, like redemption, sacrifice, the struggle for power, or even something as simple as love and loss. By connecting your character's struggles and motivations to those overarching themes, you create a much richer and more resonant experience.
He gives some great examples in the article. A character embodying the theme of redemption might be a disgraced knight trying to atone for past misdeeds, or a character grappling with the theme of power could be a mage tempted by forbidden knowledge.
And remember, these themes don't have to be epic or world-shattering. They can be incredibly personal and subtle. A character wrestling with loyalty might be torn between their duty to their family and their allegiance to their adventuring companions.
Ooh, that's a juicy one. Those internal conflicts, those moral dilemmas, are what really make a character come alive.
Exactly. And by tying those conflicts to the campaign's themes, you create this sense of purpose and interconnectedness. It's like your character's story is a microcosm of the larger story unfolding around them.
It's like those moments in a movie where the hero's personal struggle mirrors the larger conflict of the story, adding this whole other layer of meaning.
Precisely. And speaking of finding inspiration, Kenny Kings encourages us to draw from unexpected sources when creating characters. History, mythology, literature, film, even our own personal experiences can be gold mines for character concepts.
He calls it media mining, which is just a fancy way of saying steal from the best. Seriously, who hasn't been inspired by a favorite book, character, movie hero, or even a historical figure?
It's about taking those archetypes, those classic tropes, and finding ways to make them your own. Maybe you blend the cunning of Sherlock Holmes with the roguish charm of Han Solo to create a master thief who's always one step ahead.
Or you combine the stoicism of Aragorn with the dry wit of Oscar Wilde to create a noble warrior who can slay orcs with a sword or a well-placed quip. The possibilities are endless.
It's all about finding those elements that resonate with you and then weaving them together in a way that feels fresh and exciting. And remember, inspiration can strike anywhere.
A chance encounter, a snippet of overheard conversation, even a dream can spark an idea for a character. It's about being open to those moments of inspiration and then letting them take root and grow into something truly special.
But all these great ideas are useless if we don't know how to actually bring them to life in a game. So Kenny Kings wraps the article with this section on practical implementation.
He stresses the importance of Session Zero, that pregame session where players and the DM get together to establish expectations, discuss character concepts, and make sure everyone's on the same page.
He even provides a checklist to help cover all the bases: party fit, story hooks, DM tools, and player goals. It's about making sure your character fits into the overall narrative of the campaign, that their backstory and goals complement those of the other players, and that their skills and abilities contribute to the party's success.
And let's not forget about a good character introduction. How do you present your character to the other players in a way that's engaging and memorable? Kenny King suggests weaving your introduction into the narrative itself.
Maybe they're a witness to a crime, a prisoner in a dungeon, or even a mysterious figure lurking in the shadows. Starting in medias res, right in the middle of the action, instantly grabs everyone's attention and makes them curious about your character.
It's also a chance to showcase your character's personality and skills right from the start. But the article also cautions against some common pitfalls, like creating a backstory that's so convoluted and detailed that it overshadows the other players or bogs down the game.
It's about finding that balance between depth and accessibility. Your character should have a rich and compelling backstory, but it shouldn't feel like a burden to remember or explain. And remember, flexibility is key.
Don't be afraid to deviate from your original plan if the story takes an unexpected turn. Embrace the collaborative nature of D&D and allow your character to evolve organically in response to the challenges and opportunities they encounter. Kenny King sums it up beautifully. Ultimately, your character's legacy will not be solely defined by the strength of their sword or the power of their spells. It will be shaped by how they made others feel and the indelible mark they left on the campaign world.
It's a fantastic reminder that memorable characters aren't just about stats and abilities. They're about the stories they tell, the relationships they forge, and the emotions they evoke. Those are the things that'll stay with you long after the campaign has ended.
And on that note, I want to thank you for joining us on this epic deep dive into crafting those unforgettable D&D characters. Big thanks to Lit RPG Reads and, of course, Paul Bello Finefellow for providing the inspiration for this deep dive. But we want to hear from you. What's the most memorable character you've ever encountered in a game and what made them so special? Leave a comment below and share your stories. We can't wait to read them. Until next time, may your dice rolls be ever in your favor and may your characters be the stuff of legends. And one last shout out to Paul Bello Finefellow. Thanks for everything.